What's up, everybody? We're back.
Yeah. Hey, welcome back to the Metalhead's Journey. Hey, so we're back on to the top 20 rock list this week. We are on to number 17. This is The Doors. This is The Doors. You know, it's hard to do it when it's something self-titled because you got to say it twice. So this is The Doors doing The Doors, okay? I'm going to get into a history of the band here real quick, and then we're going to talk about this album. So like I said, this is The Doors. It's The Doors. Number 17 on the top 20 records of all time, rock. The Doors, formed in 1965, were an American rock band from Los Angeles. The band took its name from the book, The Doors of Perception. Dubbed the Kings of Acid Rock, they are one of the most successful bands of all time. Members include Jim Morrison on vocals, Ray Manzarek on keyboards, Robbie Krieger on guitar, and John Densmore on drums. The Doors have released 9 records. They were the first American band to accumulate 8 consecutive gold LPs. They've sold over 100 million records worldwide. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as part of the class of 1993. Famously, obviously the most famous member of the band, Jim Morrison, vocalist, died of uncertain circumstances in 1971. The band went on actually as a 3-piece and released a few more records after that. But The Doors, released in 1967, is the band's first studio album. The recording of The Doors established the band's wide range of musical influences such as jazz, classical, blues, pop, R&B, and rock music. It has been largely viewed as an essential part of the psychedelic rock evolution, while also being acknowledged as a source of inspiration to numerous other works. The Doors and Light My Fire have been inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. In 2015, the Library of Congress selected The Doors, the album, for inclusion into the National Recording Registry for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. The Doors has sold over 13 million copies worldwide as of 2015, making it the band's best-selling album. So, you know, in a previous life here on well, not on this channel, but in a previous channel, we were doing a American Film Institute's top 100 movies of all time list. And I feel like this same scenario came up a bunch of times, even though we really only made it through 16 or 17 movies on the list before we gave up. Which we had a lot of movies that were part of this national, not recording registry, obviously, but the Library of Congress also has this for movies.
Yeah.
And so we had some of those movies pop in there that we just weren't really sure what made it so culturally significant. Bringing Up Baby is one that comes to mind initially, which was it was a really, really hard watch. And I think it's often listed as being like the first romantic comedy, I think it was, or first slapstick comedy. I can't remember what the specifics were. But anyway, that's what made it culturally significant to Congress, and that's why they put it in, and that's why it's on the list. The only thing for me that I can put my finger on for this is the fact that this probably stands alone as being the one psychedelic rock album that's on this list, or acid rock, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That's the only thing to me that seems to make sense, because ultimately, like, I just don't get the record. You know, look, I'm not on anything at the moment. I don't know, man. The record just doesn't stand out to me as being anything that's super significant. It's not bad. Like, there's nothing offensive about the record. Like, I'm not sitting here saying the record is shit by any means. I mean, we've heard shit records.
Yes.
You know, Porno Graffiti comes to mind as the most recent, just absolute pile of dog shit that we've listened to. So I'm not saying that goes out to the fuckhead that was on the YouTube comments. You know, that what good or bad is. Okay, eat my ass. Okay, this album is not bad. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
You know, Dave and those guys, you know, they're going to make a couple of points here in a minute about certain things that I certainly agree with about what I think holds this record back. But ultimately, I just, you know, look, I wish I could be alive in the time frame in 1967 when this album came out to really see what the cultural impact was, because I'm sure in 1967, you know, rock music was still a fairly foreign concept. I don't think there was a ton of rock out there just yet. And so I'm sure this was something that was revolutionary in the moment. Obviously the 60s and 70s was a big drug movement as well, right? So I'm sure this kind of went right in line with that. Kind of like the movie Easy Rider, kind of went like right in line with this, right? And we didn't
Another
really get
hard
that
watch.
movie. Yeah, we didn't really get that movie either. So, look, I'm sorry I'm speaking so long on this to say ultimately that the album is just kind of mad for me. It's just fine.
Yeah, I'll go next here. Josh, I think you're. I don't know if you're spot on, but I will say I agree with you. My issue with this album is that, again, to your point, I wasn't alive in the time, obviously, and I really think that plays a big part in it. And I think overall the sound of rock at this time, it changed so drastically in just a couple of years. Because 2 years from the release of this album, you have the debuts from Led Zeppelin and from Black Sabbath in 1969. In fact, I think both bands came out with 2 albums in 69. I think Sabbath may have came out, their second album may have came out in 70, but I know Zeppelin came out with 2 records in 69 alone. And so the landscape of rock became much more guitar driven, or at least when I think of rock, that's what I think of is, or specifically classic rock or whatever, is Zeppelin and Sabbath, and basically everyone around them at that time. And I think the Doors just came in a little bit earlier, and so to their credit, that does give them a leg up on who they could have influenced. But I think their sound that they had just doesn't speak to me, because a lot of these songs just aren't guitar driven for the most part. In fact, it feels like to me, and I listened to this album more times than I wanted to, unfortunately. Very few songs, or there are a few songs that I don't think feature guitar at all, at least not that are audible to me. And I listened to this both in the car and with headphones. And I think I will say headphones is the superior listen for this record, because there are certain, and I'm pretty sure it's just the recording of the time, but there are certain instruments that only come out of one headphone versus the other. And so when you listen with headphones, you're able to kind of really pick apart what you're listening to, which I do think makes for the better experience. But yeah, man, I'm just going to echo what you're saying, Josh. This just ultimately isn't for me. And it's unfortunate, but there's nothing here that is going to make me want to revisit this album in the slightest bit.
Yeah, I'll keep it short if I can. I'm going to echo basically what the other two guys have said. I'm just going to read the very definition of psychedelic rock quickly. It's inspired, influenced, or representative of the psychedelic culture, which is centered on perception-altering hallucinogenic drugs. Now, for the sake of this, this show and this album, I refused to drop acid and listen to this album. So maybe that would.
You're not a professional.
I'm not a professional, and this music has never really spoken to me. And I don't mean just the Doors, just this era of music. I just and this isn't just like me being stupid, but it sounds like 70s porno background music. It's not me. It's just not good.
Yeah, I mean, if I was going to listen to psychedelic rock, personally, I would listen to Jimi Hendrix or
I will
Pink
say
Floyd or something like that. But
I will say that this music, to what Josh said, it's not that it's bad. It's not that it's terrible. It's just that nothing about it speaks to me and pulls me in. Now, if it's in the background, like I mowed the yard earlier, listened to the whole album from start to finish, and I can't remember a single time where I was like, "Oh God, I got to skip this." But there was never a time where I was like, what song is this? This is really good. Let me look at this and see what song this is." There was never that moment either. So it's fine as background music, but it is absolutely a period piece, and maybe that is why it's so revered. But it's lost on me because I do not do the drugs I think that I need to do in order to enjoy it.
yeah.
I'm not going to have too much of a differing opinion, but maybe a slightly different approach. I think it's definitely, I'll agree. I think Josh said it, and maybe Dave too. It's definitely an album of its time. And the crazy thing is, the year this came out was what, 67, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's actually at least 2 or 3, maybe even 4 other albums on this list that we're going through that came out the same year, and they are higher up on this list. So I think maybe after visiting those other albums, hindsight will paint this in a slightly better picture because we'll have a better idea of what kind of the musical landscape was at the time. But it hasn't quite aged very well for me. Now, I will say this, in my younger days, I did partake in some substances, and I remember listening to several of these songs back in those days, whether I was with friends or just kind of chilling in my room alone. And I remember thinking, wow, this is amazing. But I was in a completely different, chemically induced mental state. So that kind of gives you an idea of what I guess overall this album is for me. If I was blazed out of my mind right now, I'd probably give this album like at least an 8.5. But completely sober, listening with maybe a little bit more of a critical mindset. Like I said, it kind of feels like it hasn't aged as well.
Yeah.
There are some things I do like about the album, of course. Anything with an organ from around this time is going to get a thumbs up for me. Spoiler alert for my MVP later, but I think there's some really iconic organ, keyboard/organ lines in some of these songs. And yeah, just the overall vibe of the album is really prominent. Like, it's not super high energy. It's not, you're not going to be banging your head for sure. But, it for a certain mood, this fits a certain mood. And if you're going for that mood, I think it achieves it well. But overall, for my particular musical taste buds, it didn't quite do it for me.
Yeah. I agree. Like, yeah, if I was inebriated, I'm sure this would be good. But that's like being super, super hungry and then eating at a place and be like, man, this food is delicious. And it's like, well, but you were starving, right? So like, it's relative, right?
Yeah. Can we all agree here this is going to be a Ray Manzarek sweep for MVP, the keyboardist?
I mean, he's got my vote.
Yeah, I did have him as my number one. Jim Morrison, he has a unique vocal style and delivery. I do like his vocals. I'm not particularly in love with the lyrics necessarily in a lot of the songs, but I do think vocally he is the Doors sound to me. But I do think the keyboards the organ is very iconic.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
All right. Agreed. Jason, listen, I'm going to skip best riff unless somebody feels passionately about it.
No, I'm glad you did that because I was going to bring up the fact that there's really nothing.
If you count the opening to Light My Fire, the keyboard part, that's best riff for me.
Well, yeah, that's actually what I had. If y'all were going to force my hand, is the opening to. Actually, I had the opening of Break On Through.
I had the bass riff that actually is on Take It As It Comes.
Hmm.
I did have that as a highlight on mine. Yeah.
There you go.
You know what's interesting is you would think I would like a band that doesn't have a bass player a lot more than I like this band. It's unfortunate. Let's get into the top tracks. Jonah, why don't you go first? Give us your top 3.
Okay. So my top 3. This was a little tough because I was pretty tough on my scoring. But for me, it's going to be Break On Through is my number 3. I have Alabama Song Whiskey Bar is my number 2.
Really?
And Light My Fire is my number 1. I think Alabama Whiskey Song is one of the more unique songs on the album. It's got some really catchy melodies vocally and music and instrumentally. Yeah. And it's silly, but it's definitely catchy.
I feel like I wanted to like that song more than what I did because like I'm a bourbon guy, but like that song barely made my cut. Barely.
As far as I know, it's a cover.
Yeah, it's a cover, and also I cut it.
Huh.
I cut it. That song is trash.
It's rough. Go ahead, Dave. What's your top three?
Okay, so my number three, 20th Century Fox. It's just a fun little song, 2.5 minutes. It's whatever. Break on Through. I mean, I don't. That is a classic Doors song, and admittedly, probably the one I was most familiar with. I expected that to be my number one, but I'm gonna be real, and I know Jason's gonna hate this, but Light My Fire is my number one, and I actually really enjoyed like the long version because I was only familiar with like I guess the radio edit of this
Yep.
song. I wasn't familiar with like the full like jam version of this song.
Dude, that is the best musical moment on the record. Is like that 2 to 3 minutes in the middle of that song. It's the best musical moment on the record by far.
Yeah,
It's certainly the most interesting.
yeah. Light My Fire, I think, is where the stars align. It's the only song on here that I could consider. Well, I mean, Break On Through, I would listen to again. I mean, it's going to come up on classic rock radio anyway. But yeah, Light My Fire is good, like very very solid song. I think that's where everything kind of aligns as far as like the Doors sound. And those two songs, Break On Through and Light My Fire, I wish they would have maintained that energy. Like if there was a full album of that level of energy, I think I would feel a lot differently about this band, personally.
Yeah. I'll go. Dave, you're a smart man. I like it. Number three for me, 20th Century Fox. It's probably the catchiest song on the record for sure. I got Light My Fire at number two. Again, solely based on the strength of that center section. And then Break On Through to the other side. The highest energy song on the record. The only one that I would say that's an actual jam, like a real rocker on the record. So Break On Through for me is number one. Jason, what you got?
All right, so my number three. Let's see. My number three is "Light My Fire." It is still a good song. I really don't care about that 3 minutes of extra just jam session. I am
It's like one of
impressed.
only two guitar solos on the whole record.
I am
Yeah.
impressed that most of that was improvisation. I mean, kudos to them. Number two, take it as it comes. I love the organ and the bass, the actual featuring of the bass line in it.
That's the second to last song, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And-
Yeah, that's a good song.
And number one, Break On Through. Good song.
All right. So we know in rock and metal out there that really the sweet spot on these records is 8 songs. So we like to do a little exercise here on every album where we try to cut this thing down to give you really like the best 8 songs. So Jason, what are the 3 songs that you would cut from this record to get to a sweet spot of 8?
All right, I'm gonna give you a couple of things. One,
Hopefully you're giving me 3 things.
yeah, I'm gonna give you 3 things. One,
Okay.
you guys both like 20th Century Fox. That's a travesty. It's fucking awful.
What?
That's one of my cuts. Yep.
out.
Yep. I
That
looked at
almost made my cuts actually.
Yeah. I looked at you. At least it's short, but I actually wrote down what the fuck on the lyrics. Like these are actual.
That album,
Yeah.
that song is butt cheeks.
I walked with you. You walked with me. I talked
Yeah.
to you. You talked to me. Whew. Lyrical genius.
Musical
and-
genius.
Yes, musical
Yeah.
genius. And
So what are you cutting? So far you've said 2 songs, right? 20th Century and I Looked at
Jason
You.
Fox, and I looked at you. And the third one is going to be my hot take. The end. It's the radio version is the only good version.
That's not a
When
hot
you-
take, dude. That song is cheeks.
Well, now, so I just wanted to read a few of the lyrics here, because the song just kind of devolves into this long,
You're gonna catch so much
drawn
flack,
out horse shit. I have
Really?
nonsensical.
dude. That is
People
like,
like that song?
dude. The end is like
So
that
I'm
is
gonna
a
just read
super
this-
iconic song.
Let me
like,
just read
It's the
the
legitimate.
end.
worst song on the record.
Let me just read the end part. Fuck, yeah. Fuck, yeah. Come on, baby. Come on. Fuck me, baby. Fuck yeah. Fuck. Yeah.
Well,
fuck
look,
yeah.
look. You're
Come
the
on,
way
baby.
you're saying it. Also,
Fuck you,
you also
baby.
hold on.
Fuck yeah.
like,
Wait, I'm
look,
not done yet.
Jason.
Whoa.
Jason, we're gonna
Whoa.
get demonetized. You should just
Yeah.
chill out.
Fuck yeah. Come on, yeah. All
Okay.
right.
All right. Well, there goes this
Well, I
video.
can give you the better version, which is we walked into a room where his sister lived, and then he paid a visit to his brother, and
All
then
right, so my
he walked.
three that I would cut.
Yeah. Let's. We know where that section goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would cut the end because it's
Thank you.
terrible. I would cut
Yeah.
End of the Night, and I would cut I Looked at You. Jonah, what you got?
So in order of worst song first, The End has to go.
Yeah.
That is easily the worst song on the album. for me.
And that the worst part is the radio version is good. I've heard that song multiple times in soundtracks or in commercials or whatever, and you get this version, you're like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, but I do know, Dave, what you're talking about. This is like it's kind of a darling of the album
Yes.
for especially Doors fans, I guess. But I think that song sucks big time. Second is going to be Crystal Ship for me, and then I Looked at You. But it was a toss up between I Looked at You and 20th Century Fox for me. I went with cutting I Looked at You.
Well, you made the right choice, but it shouldn't have even been that close. Dave, go. What you got?
I got End of the Night. I got Alabama Song. Song is Booty. And yes, I also have The End because that song is mega cringe. But I wasn't gonna sit here and read all the lyrics and get our video demonetized. But whatever, that's fine.
Nobody's gonna watch this shit anyway.
Well,
All right,
they
well,
definitely
we
would have
made
turned
it
it off by now.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, we made it to the end of the show. This is where we like to give our score for the record, just to give you some context on how we score. For a lot of folks out there, a 7 would be an average score. For us, 5 is an average score. So for us, that means anything that's a 4.9 and below is various levels of we would not recommend the album. Anything 5 and above is various levels of we would recommend the album. And anything 9 to a 10 is like an all-time classic. So I think if I had to guess who's going to give the lowest score, I'm going to go Jonah. Jonah, why don't you give us your score?
Okay. So I recognize the cultural or not even cultural, but I recognize the significance,
The historical.
the historical significance of this album. But for me, it's not really something I would recommend to, most people, if anyone. I'm actually going to give this a 4.6.
All right, I'm going to come in next. I think I'm going to be the next. Look, like I said earlier, no need to bleed this dry. I think this album is I just don't get it. I don't think it's bad. It's just not for me. So for me, I'm just gonna settle in right at a flat 5.
All right.
Go ahead, Jay.
Oh, go ahead.
All right. This was difficult because my better judgment says that this is not a recommend. I don't know a single person that listens to the Doors, so I couldn't even ask somebody what the appeal is. But I can at least garner enough to give it a 5.1 based on the fact that if you are in the genre of being fucked up 24/7, you'll probably love the shit out of this album.
Well, you probably wouldn't need our review to tell you that either. Look, Jason, you're a smart man. I disagree with you all the time, but in this case, I think you have a perfect score. I also gave this a 5.1, and I did that solely because I don't think I could justify giving it lower because I'm not the target audience for this album, personally. And I don't think there's anything on this record that is bad.
Atrocious.
Like there are some moments that are not like I don't enjoy the record necessarily, but like nothing on it is terrible or objectively bad. So 5.1. I mean, it's like, whatever. I would never listen to this again, and I'll never listen to the Doors outside of their greatest hits, and even that I'm not enthusiastic about. So Yeah.
I was gonna say I had no idea apparently that I had never listened to these hits in their original version. Apparently, I guess I was only accustomed to the radio versions.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, so that actually brings this album just under a recommend. No real surprise. This might be one of the lowest scores we've given in a long time. Well, no, actually, we did have Porno Graffiti. I forgot about that atrocity.
What did we?
So yeah, 4.95. It is just under a recommend for us, but it is considered a D tier for us. So yeah, just not for us. No surprise for people who primarily listen to heavy metal, not into the Doors.
And the bad part is that we've pretty much kind of liked the rock list.
Oh, the rock
man.
list has by far been the best received list. Everything has been in the 8s until
I was
now.
gonna say, I feel like this is easily 3 to 3.5 points lower than the next closest thing on the rock list.
Well, the next closest thing is 8.35, which was Rush Moving Pictures, and this is 4.95. Almost 4 points. So
yeah,
pretty significant. This album is booty cheeks,
No,
as you
dog.
say, Josh. That's a no for me.
All right. Well, hey, if you thought this video was a hard watch, go ahead and hit that like, hit the subscribe. We're putting out weekly metal content right now. We got metal reactions, metal reviews, metal time machines, metal brackets, and all kinds of other cool shit. And hey, in the meantime, live long and prosper.
Take it easy, everybody.
Later.
Peace.